I took 90 days to find balance in my life, and I captured these moments so hopefully you could be inspired to soul blaze your life. I've had moments in my life when it seems like everything is difficult and up for grabs. There have been times in my life where I've had to deal with major career changes, question long-term relationships, and grapple with what my true purpose is in a world that often seems chaotic. So how do you transform adversity into opportunity when it seems like the deck is constantly stacked up against you? And how do you achieve personal and professional success if you feel like you frequently run up against emotional roadblocks? Jack Canfield has some answers for you. Jack is an internationally renowned teacher, motivational speaker, truth seeker, and life changer. He's been at the cutting edge of the personal transformation movement for decades and has helped countless people overcome personal obstacles and negative self-talk so they can manifest their dreams. His co-authored book, Chicken Soup for the Soul, has sold so many copies worldwide that it's in the Guinness Book of World Records. But Jack wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth. On the contrary, he went from floor sweeper to soul seeker and became an acclaimed entrepreneur the old-fashioned way, by working his way through life's obstacles one step at a time. I met up with Jack at his home in Santa Barbara to find out more about how he transformed adversity into opportunity and helped so many people. Join me.
I grew up in a home where my mother was an alcoholic, my father was an alcoholic, my father was violent. I got beaten a lot, not like with whips and chains, but I mean, you know, there was a lot of physical punishment, if you will, and some of it was, when my dad was drinking, I would hide. I was born in 1944. Back in the 50s, radios were these things that were like this far off the ground and came down. There was a little bit of that technology, and it was a speaker, and then most of it was just like empty cabinetry. And when my dad was drinking late at night, I would go and hide in there, and I'd pull it back against the wall so he couldn't find me. The good news is it's made me what they call hypervigilant. I notice everything around me. If anything's out of place, like my dad would notice, then he'd get upset. So that's been valuable. But then I went to college. I was a scholarship student. I went to a good school, Harvard. But I was always like...
How did you get into Harvard?
I played football.
Okay. Okay. Good. All right.
They needed an end, you know, so I got in there. I ended up playing rugby, not football, but I graduated in the top, 1/10 of my class, but mainly it was, if you were from West Virginia, they always took 2 people from West Virginia every year. If I was from Pennsylvania or California, I don't think I would have got in. But I had a great experience there. I majored in Chinese history, which is a whole other story. I think I had past lives in China, and that was starting to seep through. And then I ended up teaching in an all-black inner-city high school, and that's when it all shifted for me. I was kind of interested in civil rights because I was interested in equality, but what really shifted for me was my students didn't believe in themselves. They were all these kids who'd never been more than 5 blocks from their house. They didn't think they could succeed. Their parents hadn't succeeded. And so that's literally how Chicken Soup for the Soul started. I was gathering these stories of African Americans who had succeeded to show these kids that was possible and to get them stimulated to think, well, it's worth extending effort so you can get that. I was teaching this one school and the principal said, my husband's company needs what you're doing. And I said, I've never worked in a company. I don't know what to tell people in a company.
I'm just Jack, little Jack.
Exactly. Yeah. The only job I ever had was a floor sweeper in a General Electric plant one summer between college and graduate school. And she said something to me that changed my life. She said, they're just big kids in suits. Now you go over and teach them. Because you've taught kids,
that.
right? And it turned out to be true.
Yes.
And so that's how I started doing corporate trainings and public trainings, and then...
So you were doing that before Chicken Soup?
Yeah, I was basically, I started being a trainer and doing workshops for the general public on the weekends and working with corporations and schools in the middle of the week. It was about a 1-month period where people were going like, that story you told about the puppy, is that in a book anywhere? My daughter needs to hear that. That story you told about the Boy Scout, is that in a book anywhere? My son needs to read it. The story you told about that sales guy, my sales team needs to hear that. And I kept going, wow, God, I was coming home on a plane when God's telling me, put these stories in a book. It's like, boom, 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 it's like messages. If the story illustrated a principle of success, of taking 100% responsibility, of being compassionate, of being loving, of going for your dream, overcoming obstacles, believing in yourself, I would gather that story. And then I would pepper them into my speeches. And so I made this commitment that I would write 2 stories a week for a year. Then I'd have 100 stories. So I started to find some others, and along the way I met Mark Victor Hansen. I think I had about 70 at the time. He had been a student ambassador to India when he was in graduate school. And he said, 101 is the number of completion. We should have 101. And I'll get 31, you've got 70. And so that's what we did. And that became our partnership that now has produced over 250 books, 500 million sold, 500 million. And I think it's now up to 57 languages around the world.